Like this show and want to make your own? Let me tell you about Anchor. It's free, and they have creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. And now you can even add any song from Spotify directly to your episodes. The possibilities are endless for what you can create, whether it's music analysis, your own radio show, or something the world's never heard before. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. And you can also make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. So download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
Hi, and welcome to the Vocal Fries Podcast, the podcast about linguistic discrimination.
I'm Carrie Gillen.
And I'm Megan Figueroa. I was laughing at you because you were counting down to our recording sesh, but you counted up.
Because of course, it doesn't count up.
I know. And I was just like, how am I going to say that we're the Vocal Fries when I'm thinking about you counting up? Okay.
You did really well until you said your own name.
Yes.
Oh, I just remembered. So before we get into anything, this week, Megan is going to be defending.
Yes. Oh my God.
And we're all going to have to call her Dr. Megan from now on, or Dr. Fig, as we're here in this episode.
Yes, Dr. Fig, I really like that.
Yeah, me
too. And it could fit on a personalized license plate.
Yes, it could. If that is your want.
If that is my want, yes. Oh my gosh, yeah. No,
Are you nervous?
I'm very nervous and I'm all over the place. Luckily, we recorded this episode like a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, obviously not what we're saying right now. This is not a couple weeks ago, but
no, this is only a couple of days before you get to download it.
Yeah, so I will be just a completely different person the next time we record. Just kidding.
That is true. That is very true. I think you should not be nervous, honestly. It's the most fun that you can have because you are done.
Yes.
And they really can't fail you.
Yeah, I mean.
Technically they can, but then you would have a lawsuit on your hands. Like, they can't. They really can't.
Yeah. They let me get this far.
If they're letting you defend, that means that they think it's good enough.
Yeah, and I have really, competent and also kind people on my committees, so...
Yeah, you have nothing to worry about. Absolutely nothing to worry about. So I think as much as you can, have fun. That's what one of my committee members told me when I was finishing. She's like, just have fun. And I did, because I knew.
I'll try. I'll report back on how much fun or not fun I had. Or if I remember it at all, if I completely blank it out.
That's also possible, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, good luck, and everyone should send their warm wishes your way.
Well, yes, I totally appreciate that. You know, y'all know how much I am on Twitter.
Yes, tweet.
Yes.
Tweet at us, the Vocal Fries, or at Megan.
Yeah. Oh, and I always do. I like how there are some people that follow us that always at us when they come across something that's related to the pod.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much, guys.
Yeah, and a few people added us when it was that Time article about the words you shouldn't say, which we will talk about next episode, right?
Right. Yes, we need to do that.
Yeah. So some of the tweets that we get are actually turning into episodes, which is cool.
Yes, and people are giving us lots of suggestions, like there's people who know people who could talk to us about law. People want to talk about disability and how language reflects that.
Mm-hmm. Catalan?
Catalan,
yeah.
Yes. I can't even remember all the things that have been suggested to us, and I want everyone to know that your ideas are noted, and we do want to get to all of them.
Yeah. I think this goes back to our very first episode when I was talking about how my partner was like, are you going to be able to have enough episodes? Like, is there enough to talk about? I'm like, We could probably have like years of episodes on this.
No, forever, because there's always going to be something either shitty in the media or just something interesting that we want to talk about. So this is not going away anytime soon. I mean, there are new people on the scene now. There's the Accentism Project, for example.
Yes. Yeah, and we keep, oh my gosh, reading those are so frustrating.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. They're so heartbreaking because you're like, this is not good. This is not a good reason to be discriminated. I mean, there's no really, well, there are good reasons to be discriminated against, I guess. But most of the reasons that we discriminate against each other are not good. But when it has to do with language, of course, that's like, really upsetting to me.
Right.
So.
Exactly.
Stop being assholes.
Yes. Except to Nazis.
They're well, they should stop being assholes too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Stop being Nazis, but anyway, that's a whole other conversation. Right. We do have a little bit of housekeeping, so want to remind everyone that we have a Patreon, and we want to thank Ethan Kudlu for supporting us, who is also going to be a future guest. Yes. We're not sure exactly when. Probably, I'm going to guess in 4 weeks, but soon.
Yes.
Or soon for us.
Right.
And we do have 2 bonus episodes up, one on the Word of the Year at the Linguistic Society of America, and an extra poem from Alberto Rios. And we're going to have a 3rd one up soon. So, and just a reminder that you get the bonus episodes at the $5 level.
Yes. So support an indie podcast if you can.
If you can, of course.
Yes.
Of course. Only if you can. I do not want anyone to
starve. No. Yeah.
You have to house and clothe and feed yourself first.
I know there's a lot of students that listen. And
right. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Please. Come on.
Feel no guilt.
Yes.
I did also want to mention one other podcast that talks about language, The World in Words. Their most recent episode is about the word kayfabe, and I found it so fascinating.
Okay, what is is it? You're saying fabe, kayfabe, K like K dash fabe.
I mean, it's one word. It's spelled as one word, so Kayfabe.
Oh, kayfabe. Okay. So what the hell is? And how can you have a whole episode on it? What? Okay. What?
Right. How can you have a whole episode about one word? Well, I think you can on many words, but this one in particular is very interesting. So, I don't remember the first time I came across this word. I think maybe in the last year or so. And it's a word from professional wrestling. Kayfabe, so I'm just going to read the definition from Wikipedia because I know I will mess it up otherwise. So it's the portrayal of staged events within the industry, the professional wrestling industry, as real or true. Specifically the portrayal of competition, rivalries, and relationships between participants as being genuine and not of a staged or predetermined nature of any kind. So, if you're the bad guy, you can't be seen hanging out with the good guy in real life.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so you're supposed to maintain this illusion all the time.
This is method acting.
Yeah. I mean, they do let it drop if there's nobody from the public in the room. But as soon as a member of the public, let's say a journalist walked into the backstage, they would immediately have to put on the.
Wow.
Yeah, it's so fascinating, and I knew it existed, but this whole episode is so fun because they go into a lot of detail about some examples of kayfabe. So, for example, one wrestler punched a journalist at one point to maintain kayfabe. Trump comes into it. Oh my God. It's a fascinating episode, so I highly recommend it.
He punched a journal. Okay. That is dedication to the cause.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so it's kind of like what Stephen Colbert used to do.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yes, Colbert's very kayfabe. Good kayfabe. Yeah, he did.
Yeah. Funny. Okay.
Every once in a while, he would sort of let it drop a little, depending on the guest.
Well, I mean, because Colbert, the character was so ridiculous. You'd see him laughing at himself sometimes.
Yeah, I just remember there was this one episode where he was interviewing a very old woman, and he just didn't want to push her too hard.
Aww.
Yeah, because I could see him slipping there. But anyway, I don't even remember who that was.
Was it the rep from DC? Because he loved her.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I really don't remember.
What her name is. Anyway. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And so for this episode, we talked to my very good friend, Dr. Ursula Orr. And I just wanted to give a little bit of background because she talks about some things without giving enough detail maybe for people who don't already know.
And also, do you think this should serve as kind of a content warning for...
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
So content warning, if you... just so you know, she was attacked by a cop. So there's some physical violence described. And we do talk about lynching and rape. So if that's too upsetting to listen to, you might want to skip this episode. Yeah, so she was arrested for jaywalking, and I say jaywalking with scare quotes because, as we talk about in the episode, the road was basically closed off. You could drive down it to park. You could, but it was basically like, don't come down this road, because most of that street was under construction. You couldn't drive at all. So there's just this one little tiny mini block where you could sort of drive. So she was jaywalking there, but it wasn't everybody was jaywalking because it was closed off.
Right.
No one thought of it as a thoroughfare. And so anyway, so she was
arrested for walking while black.
Yeah. She was stopped for walking while black, and then you'll hear how it escalated to her being arrested. And then we also wanted to talk about, she mentions being fired, and I just wanted to point out that she was fired from her summer position. She wasn't fired from ASU completely, so that could be confusing. And also wanted to just mention that this episode is more about rhetoric than it is about language. There is some discussion of language. And we just want to highlight the fact that rhetoric can still tell us something about linguistic discrimination, as we discussed. So
right. Yeah. Perfect. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So, and I would just like to say that listening to the rough cut of this earlier this week, it's really compelling and heartbreaking and good to like. I feel very lucky that she came and talk to us about this, and I think it's very important. And if y'all are able to get past the content warning, I think you'll learn a lot, and I think it's very good.
Yeah, so. She opens up her emotions she's very open, and I think it's an important discussion. So yeah, I do hope that people can listen, understanding that if you can't, you can't.
Right. So shall we?
Yes, let's begin.
All right. Today, our guest is Dr. Ursula J. Orr. Ursula is the Lincoln Professor of Ethics in the School of Social Transformation and Assistant Professor of African and African American Studies and Rhetoric at Arizona State University. Her work examines the persuasive strategies of aggrieved communities as they operate within a post-emancipation historical context. Thank you so much, Ursula, for enjoying... Oh, Ursula! Ursula, thank you! Ursula, thank you!
You're welcome, Schmegan.
Oh my gosh.
Thanks so much for having me, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
It's good to be here.
Yeah.
Happy New Year, happy birthdays, happy Valentine's Day. If I missed any other special days of your lives, happy for all of them as well.
Yeah.
Happy all of the days to you.
Yes. Oh, wait a minute. Happy and big ups to Megan. Because what's about to happen?
My dissertation defense. Yes.
What's about to happen? It's about to go down. Yeah. Fantastic.
If y'all couldn't tell, we know Ursula. We know her. This is not the first time we've met.
Yes.
No.
But we're very excited to have her, and we have so many things that we want to talk to you about, but we can't talk to you about all of the things because you know so many things that we want to know about, but we had to pick a few.
Copy that.
Should we get into it? Actually, first of all, could you define rhetoric and what it means to be a rhetorician?
Love the question. So, okay, there's a multitude of definitions for rhetoric, right? And we typically, there's a negative connotation and a positive connotation. Most are familiar with the negative, that rhetoric is bullshit. It's hot air, and it's what politicians push to give you what you want, to get what they want ultimately. So it's the sleazy kind of duping language that undermines the very aims that representatives claim that they are working to champion. And so that's typically the definition that people associate with rhetoric.
Right.
But rhetoric's neither good or bad. You know what I mean? It's how we wield it. And so rhetoric ultimately really is the ability to perceive in any given situation or context the available means of persuasion. And so when we talk about persuasion, we don't really mean to make people do what you want them to do. We mean to inform, to translate, to teach, to translate ideas, communicate ideas, to inform, to work towards constituting a sense of collective identity, shared identity. It's all about establishing connections and disruptions to produce particular or desired outcomes.
Right.
And so when we think about it that way, it's not just linguistic, right? It's also performative, and it can also function materially. So, for instance, the National Mall, right? Like we can think about the National Mall. The National Mall functions rhetorically as an argument about America's past and as an argument about its anchoring principles. That landscape in and of itself reflects governing principles of the nation, and it constitutes a certain kind of not public memory, but national memory. That is the place where we go to recall who we are and what we mean to one another. And that place has rhetorical power. Hence the reason why folks take siege of that bitch on a regular basis when, they want to protest for some shit. Same exact thing with the National Mall. And the National Mall in and of itself is rhetorically powerful if you think about the connection between the university and the nation state. The university is a microcosm of the nation. The very rhetoric and arguments, the ideology, the language, the discourse, the practices that constitute the nation are the very ones that have formed the university space. And I mean, we could think about this, from a constitutional law perspective, constitutional theory. Legally, the legalese of it, right? Rhetorically, how bodies are constituted through language and discourse and practice. And then how those practices saturate spaces and then determine who does and does not simply determines, but participates in determining who has access to that space, who belongs to that space, who doesn't belong.
Right.
The university functions just like the nation. And so, as a rhetorician, we look at all those kind of things. So we look at how material objects make arguments in the world, make moves in the world, translate information, right? Mount Rushmore has a very strong rhetorical argument that people are like, fuck this shit, let's blow this bitch up, right?
Right.
Right.
Let's destroy sacred space by carving men's faces into it.
And then we connect this to this larger notion of civil religion. I feel like I'm about to start preaching for real. But I'm kind of deviating from a more concrete definition of rhetoric. But rhetoric ultimately is the ability to perceive in any given moment the available means of persuasion. Children know how to persuade. Children are some of the most savvy rhetors there are. And so this is the ability to use language, action, material objects to produce desired outcomes, just the real basic sense. Rhetorical is a term that describes how social actors use language or use material objects to communicate ideas and to constitute collective identity, for instance, to do things in the world. And then rhetorical analysis, asks very specific questions. The common questions that you would hear from a journalist, most people are familiar with: the who, when, where, why, and how. But questions to what extent and for what purposes, because it's always about the underlying motive or intent, whether that is conscious or unconscious.
One of the things that I thought about as you were speaking about this very broad area is statues and how they perform in the world. And that's really important right now, especially with this movement to take down a bunch of really shitty statues.
And think about all the arguments that are used. Like the statue is the embodiment of an argument about the past, right? And not just the past, but a particular way of remembering and celebrating a particular and selective past. And so there literally is a competition over history, you know, via these rhetorical productions of memory that inculcate values to individuals who go visit them and read the inscriptions and are retold the story, and they share that story on with the rest of their generations and their generations and their generations. And it's crazy because I was at UVA working on what I thought was going to be the second book project, was about rhetorical university landscapes as rhetorical spaces that through the landscape architecture of the university space, a particular notion of a public identity is constituted, and through that identity the notion of, you know, an ideal citizen and citizenry is, you know, made. And so it becomes like this birthing place to reproduce this, you know, the ideal citizen, and that was American education, right? But what was of interest to me was the other histories that were present at UVA that no one knew about, which was specifically about, you know, how did that university come about?
Right.
Who built the university, right? Who helped the university run? And so the part of the interest that I had was about the multiple discourses that constituted that space, the ones that were both reverberated loudly and the ones that were silent. And then how this rhetoric of the good citizen as constituted through the architectural landscape of UVA, what is erased from that understanding, or what is erased from that narrative that ultimately works to constitute that narrative.
And that reminds me of what Michelle Obama said about the White House as well.
Yeah.
She said that she was raising her black girls in a house that slaves built.
Yeah. And so, and that was part of the project included me going to UVA, going to the National Mall. I never went to the White House, but, you know, read a lot of work on the White House. And so I went to University of Maryland College Park for undergrad. And, when I ended up getting kicked off campus because, you know, they went to Sweet 16, Final Four, and then championship, and then, you know, admissions soared and housing was no longer guaranteed. And so, you know, folks got kicked off. There, where I lived when I was living off campus, there was a plantation that had turned into like a historical site. And I used to walk past it on my way to school. And one day I was just like, I just stopped and I just looked, you know, and read the, like, you know, plate on the gate. And I was like, what is this spot, right? I think it's like Hyattsville or some shit. No, Riverdale. And long story short, I ended up taking a tour and I realized it was the plantation that was the University of Maryland. And so, yeah, that's where the university has started, right? As an agricultural school through that plantation. And so, you know, connecting that history to the university that I was going to. And long story short, noticing that we had McKeldin Library, and then we had a reflection pool. And then we had the main administrative building. And I remember thinking, this looks just like the National Mall. It looks like the Capitol building. It looks like, you know, the Lincoln Memorial. And I just thought, what is it about this? And then, you know, in the mall, there's like all these other little buildings, which are all the classrooms and / dormitories. And this is crazy because, you know, I'm originally from Virginia, out of Norfolk. My brother wanted to go to UVA. I had never gone to UVA. I had never been to Monticello. I had never been to Charlottesville because, you know, motherfuckers out of Norfolk don't go to Charlottesville. And so the first time I went to Charlottesville was to go check out UVA because I said, shit. And it wasn't until I got ready to come to ASU for a job talk that it hit me, because I had come back to Penn State and I realized Penn State had a slightly similar architectural landscape as that of UVA's and that of the National Mall. And I thought, who is building universities? And I said, presidents build universities. And I said, no, they don't. And I was like, fuck, yes, they do. Fucking TJ built the first public institution. And I said, he was also, you know, an amateur architect. And I was like, fuck, this motherfucker's had a hand in everything, because TJ built the National Mall as well, right? So thinking about TJ's philosophy, thinking about his architectural style, thinking about the logic and the ideology that informed that shit, and really, it really got me thinking about just how impactful he has been on our understanding of the nation and education, how landscape architecture reinforces those connections in very interesting ways. So when I got to UVA, I was looking at the memorials and my stomach was starting to get upset. And then I realized, oh shit, part of the reason my stomach's getting upset is because as I'm walking and seeing these memorials, I'm also looking past the memorials and I see what I know to have been slave quarters, because students brought their slaves to campus. And that was when I was like, oh shit, Agamben talks about, the exclusive inclusion. And I was like, this is it in material form, manifested in constitutional law. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. That was the beginning of what I thought was going to be the second book project, which is a part of the Civility While Black and Female, which will be the second book project.
And that's actually what we wanted to talk to you about today was what it means to perform civility and what it means to perform civility while you're Black and female.
Yeah, I've been working through this, long story short, I guess, kind of all my life, in the sense of respectability politics within African American culture, and the purpose and function of those politics, and how they derived historically, and how they were a adaptive method to the condition of being Black and female in America, and what that meant, and the vulnerability and the precarity of that positionality. I'm really thankful for what has transpired in my life that has given me the opportunity to now focus on this kind of work and these kind of questions, and delve through these questions with fellow students, because in the English department, this wouldn't be the case. But the question of civility for me has to do with how is it that my humanity is consistently dismissed, and tropes of madness, tropes of insanity, tropes of hypersexuality are consistently placed upon me, despite my efforts to use language wisely, to use language in an exacting manner in a moment of trauma. The kind of work that it takes to do that, and all the while being told that I'm out of place, that I'm out of pocket, that I'm not a proper woman, that I am uncivil, that I'm unruly, that I'm inappropriate. And I'm referring to my assault on May 20, 2014. And a couple of weeks later, I was hearing about the story of Sandra Bland. And then a week or two after that, I was sitting by my father's bedside because he was dying. And literally telling him, I'm sorry for not being a lady in the street. I'm sorry for not being the lady that you wanted me to be. I will work to do better. And crying about it, because it's the last thing that I really wanted to say, but I did want to give him some peace.
Yeah.
And because the whole thing is about, you got to survive America's ways. The ways America is set up to kill you. And respectability politics is a primary it's a primary way in which African Americans have worked to survive the way America is set up to kill them. And so here I am, not performing those politics in a way that makes me look reckless, in a way that makes me look like I have a death wish, in a way that makes people in my own family call me crazy and mad, in a way that people say, well, it was only a matter of time because, Ursula ain't got no cover for her mouth. You know what I'm saying? That, I was always putting a target on my back because I chose to speak rather than to be silent. I chose to act rather than to be passive. I spoke my mind. I spoke my piece. But it really had to do with my spirit. And Pat Williams calls it spirit murder. And there's tons of other scholars who talk about it in other ways and use other terms as well. But it's something about Pat's language. And I think also about how Pat opens up in An Alchemy of Race and Rights with the issue of madness. Her family thinks that she's mad. Her family thinks that she's crazy. Her family thinks that she's paranoid. Her family thinks that she's schizophrenic.
Wow.
And it's because she sees too much. And it made me think about the trope of madness that I had read in African American literature, specifically where it's Black women of a certain kind of agency that are rendered mad for the ways that, the context of their situations, rhetorical contexts, right, constrict their abilities to express their full humanity. And we talk about the ability to express our true authentic selves, right? And we usually use that kind of language. We talk about sexuality, but it has to do with everything, And so, we all have to make decisions and choices where we chip away at our own spirit just to, be able to do what we need to do to make it through the day. And that has always been a difficult thing for me. And that night on May 20th, there I was in the street, and it was like, I can't can't give you one, the satisfaction of knowing that you've almost killed me, right? Because the university was killing me. The year prior, I had sold everything in my house except for my cat and my mattress, and had planned to move. And I had gone to DC to finish this article on the National Mall at MLK, which is still not done. And I was so batshit out of my fucking mind because of what ASU had done to me, because of what this space had done to me, that I completely had ignored the fact that, you know, it's the 50th anniversary March on Washington, and that, you know, shit's gonna be going down to DC. Mm-hmm. And long story short, I get to DC, shit is popping off, you know, folks is protesting, but it's like this big ass fucking family reunion and shit, you know, and I'm in black shorts and yellow shorts and a black and white type shirt, striped shirt. And I'm walking down the street, walking down 7th Avenue, and this dude with like these protective lenses, he's like, "Hey, Bumblebee," you know? And I know he's talking to me, and like, you know, I got all this theory in my head and shit, because, you know, I'm writing as I'm walking. Like, I'm literally writing as I'm walking. Like, y'all fellow nerds, y'all know what the fuck I'm talking about, right? Mm-hmm. You're always thinking, you're always processing, you're always taking some shit in, right? And then you're telling yourself, if you're lucky, bitch, calm down. Just like try to clear out your brain for a second. Just like breathe, you know? But this is what was happening. I was writing in my head as I was walking down the street. And so I'm literally getting hailed by this blind man who asked me to help him get to the feet of Lincoln. Now, the irony of this shit, right? This older black man who cannot fucking see, asking this blind bitch who he think can see, but who is emotionally, psychologically, and spiritually blind at this moment, because I'm done, to help me get to the feet of what for African Americans has been contextualized as one of the greatest unifying symbols of the struggle. Right. I mean, it's got power, and we know it's got power because it still resonates today. I mean, if that wasn't the case, then Obama wouldn't be pulling on the shit the way he did. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Like, you know, part of Obama's candidacy was rendering himself Lincoln-esque. You know what I'm saying? That he will be a savior of sorts. Hence, you know, I'm running on, this is rhetoric again, by the way, I'm running on the idea of hope, right? And he works to articulate what hope means and what that might look like. But also his body functions as a rhetorical text in the sense that it represents the possibility of another kind of America of both black and white, and America of both, you know, imperialism, you know, and African colonialism. And so here I am in the midst of like this kind of historical moment, right? We got a black president, but nothing has really changed when it comes to the way America is set up to kill motherfucking black people. You know what I'm saying?
It might even have gotten worse.
Yeah. And it's a reiteration of the same. Like, it makes me think about how diseases have these cycles where we think we might have eradicated it, we might have suppressed it, maybe, you know, some kind of gene therapy or some shit, but just like every other living organism, it finds a fucking way. You know what I'm saying? Because the shit don't actually really fucking die because it's of us. You feel me? It's fucking of us. And here I am writing about this in a manuscript, you know, and getting snatched up by it in the very moment in May 20th, 2014, where I find myself literally a year later on my father's bedside telling him, apologizing for not being the lady in the street that I needed to be, to make him feel comfortable about the fact that he knows that I know that he can't do shit to keep me safe in America. So what does it mean for me to enact civility in the street, right? For me, in that moment, it functioned as a form of dissent. And that's my God-given constitutional fucking right. But why is it that some dissenting bodies are accepted and other dissenting bodies are put down? Why is it that bodies in the street that aren't necessarily dissenting but simply using, you know, using the available means of persuasion, right? I'm using my words. I'm not fighting back because I know I can't fight back. I don't walk away from the cop because I know that's not a fucking option. That's just an excuse. Right? These are part of the rhetorical constraints that limit what I can and cannot do and what I can and cannot say. My body also functions likewise as that kind of constraint, right? That likewise invites people to oversee me in ways that suppress my humanity, the full expression of my authentic self. So when I was thinking through in jail, what the fuck I was going to say to my daddy.
Yeah.
What I was thinking I was going to say to my daddy, I was like, shit, it's not just what I got to say to my daddy, it's what do I got to say to America?
Right.
And then the other thought was, I'm a part of a longer tradition, and I don't know how to walk in this moment, and I don't know how to think through this moment. And so who could I go to? Who can model for me how to walk with the sense of integrity and self-respect so that I don't become complicit in the murder of my own spirit, which is what I have been feeling the entire time. Like, Carrie knows, I used to tell Carrie, bitch, we in a 7th circle of hell.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And the university is an ugly space.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it can be. Definitely.
And many of us go there. We go there for all kinds of reasons. We go there for refuge. We go there for, it's the only thing we know how to do. We go there for the fact that it's a haven for our, social inequities and
learning. Like, there's some learning that goes on.
Yes.
That's why I always liked it.
And I mean, and then, for everybody who wants to learn and know and grow, is there. But in the same sense, there's other reasons why it's attractive to people.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But I've always said about academe is it's a clearinghouse for the socially inept and the mentally ill. And I still feel that very much to the day. It's a nut house, and I'm in a nut house. And then I realized, oh shit, it's a reproduction of the same, because when we think about the concentric circles, and yet again, when I use this metaphor, the 7th circle of hell, I use it for a fucking reason.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And so that brings me back to this notion of space. That brings me back to the idea of civility and dissent. And I'm still working through these ideas very much. The first piece where I was really trying to make sense of it was when I was orchestrating my own defense. Mm-hmm. If I know what constitutes the restrictions of how I will be perceived by the media, then I have to render myself legible to the media. I have to help them understand and interpret my behavior as behavior that was appropriate, right? Not as behavior that was irate, a behavior of a illegitimate individual, a behavior of a disrespectful person. No, I have to paint myself patriotic. How do I do that? Yeah. Those were the rhetorical questions that I found myself really trying to parse out. And I was so thankful that I had the ethnic studies working group that had come together in response to, the ban on ethnic studies,
right?
And what was going down in Tucson. Mm-hmm. And the year prior is when I got connected with them, and I was working with them on that initiative. And so when my shit dropped, I mean, they just came guns blazing. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I'm just so immensely thankful. And from there on out, they just networked. They reached out, and my network in DC and the DMV, they linked up together and worked to orchestrate my defense. And so here I am. I get out of jail. 2 days later, I go to a conference because it's the Rhetoric Society of America. Gotta fucking go to the flagship conference.
I remember that.
I had 3 papers to deliver, and they were all about this second book project on race, power, academic space, because that's what the book was going to be called, Race, Power, Academic Space. And one talk was on Standing at the Intersection, which was a book about intersectional rhetoric and feminism and coalition politics. And I literally had gotten snatched up 2 nights prior in the fucking intersection.
Which, by the way, for people who don't know, that street was under construction at the time. So the fact that you were snatched up for jaywalking, quote unquote, was ridiculous because everyone was crossing that street. Technically jaywalking, but there was basically no traffic.
You can't jaywalk in a pedestrian only thoroughfare. Right. And you know what makes a fucking space a pedestrian only thoroughfare? Is when they're fucking yay big road closed signs to fucking motorists, right? Exactly. And makeshift pathways for pedestrians to navigate the middle of the street. Hence the reason why the fucking road is closed.
Yeah. Everyone was crossing that street higgledy-piggledy.
Even the people that were in the dash cam video walking by, I was getting my ass beat. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's.
But I'm jaywalking, but they're not jaywalking, and the white woman that he blew past to fucking get at me wasn't jaywalking either. But the darkest body in the dark of night is so fucking overly seen.
Right.
If that's not the epitome of surveillance, I don't know what the fuck is. if that's not the fucking epitome of selective policing, I don't know what the fuck is. Because how is it what I'm doing is different from anybody else? And it you know, the crazy thing about it is that, like, I literally had just, you know, finished the book about lynching and citizenship and submitted it to the press, University of Mississippi Press. You know, thinking about lynching as a boundary making practice of constituting national identity, right? As exclusively racial, you know, construction, white racialized construction. And about seeing this argument reverberating throughout history. And how we have used this understanding of lynching to educate ourselves about the nation and how democracy works. How it's provided basically a critical democratic literacy, right? So part of the question was, how do Black folks read the nation, right? Well, the lynched Black body is a paramount symbol of how African Americans have come to understand the nation. And we see this in the way that writers have picked up, you know, historical lynchings and used them, right, as tropes in their work to make certain arguments, right, about coalition politics, about racism, right, about race and space, about the Constitution, right? Basically, you know, critical race theory. And unpacking how race works in America, right? And how it works against all of us, and how it uses all of us, and how we use it. And I traced that from the instantiation of the nation to the contemporary moment, and it ended with, you know, Trayvon Martin. But when I wrote to the press and I submitted the manuscript, I said, hey, this is everything, but I feel like it's not done. Like, there's something missing. I feel like it's in the conclusion, but something's missing. And here I am in jail, like, shit. I just got finished writing this fucking book, and I knew I was upset about the fact that it focused on men, because I know women were likewise assaulted, and I know the relationship between lynching and rape. But my focus really was basically, I was so frustrated by the claim that reading situations like Amadou Diallo as a lynching was hyperbolic. And it reminded me of how, you know, how this end of lynching discourse had kind of come about, you know, and really arose in the 1930s when some anti-lynching organizations were like, hey, lynching has decreased, you know, in number. And so we're getting better, right? This is a sign that, you know, times are getting better and we're progressing, right? And that we're bringing the nation closer in line with its governing principles, right? And, you know, other folks are like, NAACP, for instance, like, nah, fuck that noise. No, that's not the case. You know, you guys want to focus on, and this is what, you know, Ashford Rushdi's, points out in his history of lynching and lynching discourse specifically, is that, you know, you have these two camps of anti-lynching advocates, one arguing that lynching is dead, right? And the other one's like, no, it's not dead, it's just changed in form, right? So there's an argument over motive and form, right? The motive is always the same, the form has just changed, right? And so it's the same exact thing. I was in jail and I was thinking, shit, you know, I completely left us out. Like, I left women out of this manuscript, right? And here I am, literally getting snatched up in the very thing that I was writing about, and the very thing that I had in some way kind of imagined that didn't affect me directly, affected me indirectly. Only in the sense that, you know, not to say that women weren't lynched, but, you know, there's a disproportionate number of Black men who were lynched, in addition to Jews, Mexicans, and African American women. So when I think about, you know, if we're going to quantify this, you know what I'm saying? It really was because it was an argument about citizenship. And an argument about citizenship ain't between men and women. Argument about citizenship is between men and men, right? Because women couldn't own property.
Right.
You know?
And this also reminds me of what happened in, like, Yugoslavia, right? Like, what happens to the boys and the men? They get murdered. What happens to the women and the girls? They get raped. So there is a gendered difference.
Yes. And, you know, all the while I'm in jail thinking, shit. And I'm also thinking, how did I perform on site? I'm wondering if I gave him what he wanted. You know, I ended up literally assed out. You know, I had a thong on, so I'm literally assed out like one of the fucking lawyers made a comment about my fucking ass. He goes, well, clearly you know, yoga's been doing you good.
No.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you fire that lawyer? Because, wow.
Yeah, he got removed. He got removed.
Good.
He got removed. But, you know, I'm literally assed out in the street. It don't get no.
And it's just like, it reinforces the idea that civility, quote unquote, civility is not the same for every body. It has to be performed differently.
Right.
Yeah, you have to be more deferential.
Yeah, exactly.
Depending on who you are.
Right. And then, you know, the killer was is that literally, you know, a year later, because that was May 20th, 2014, I got assaulted. May 19th, 2015, settled with the university and all the other 3 entities. And then July, I was in DC, and long story short, I got called away and I had to fly down to Jacksonville, and my dad was dying. He literally could not breathe. So here I am, like, you know, months going through a trial, you know, felony charges, misdemeanors, thinking about if I'm going to plea out, if we're going to go to trial, what would a trial look like here in Arizona for me? You know, Arpaio is still in office. All the charges were trumped up. We knew the fucking, you know, cops were lying. They kept telling us there was no dash cam video. I knew there was a fucking dash cam video. And then the dash cam video gets leaked a month later. And we get a phone call from CNN saying, yo, do you want to get in front of this? Because, you know, Channel 3 or Channel 5 just sent us this video. And it's pretty damaging. And by this point, I had already been fired by the university. And had brought on a labor law attorney and shit. Because they had broke my they broke my contract. And so, yeah, it was a surreal moment. You know, here I am telling my father, apologizing to him because I want him to go in peace. And next thing you know, this just in, dash cam video released from Sandra Bland's arrest.
Right.
And here I am crying my eyes out. It's me, my dad, and my best friend Kenitha. All our hands are together on my dad's chest because he's strapped down in the bed. He's intubated, like he can't move, right? All he's doing is like crying. And like he can't even hold me back, right? And mind you, this is a man that I've always argued with all my life. So the fact that we cannot talk is killing us both. And all you hear is Sandra talking to Insenia. And she's using her words, and the bitch is so tight. She is calling it. She is reading it, right? And Insenia don't like this shit, right? And so what do bullies do? What do bullies with fucking badges and the authority of the state to kill with fucking impunity, what do? They do what they've been trained to do. They do what they've been encouraged to do. They do what the culture has sanctioned. And so that's what he did.
Yeah, that video wrecked me.
And I didn't go back to the hospital for like 3 days.
Oh.
And my father thought that was going to be the last day he saw me. And he didn't want me to come back either. Like, the whole thing is that he did not want me to see him like that. He didn't want any of us to see him like that. He said they're all going to get a piece of me. Oh. And I couldn't help but to think about the nation. I was like, fuck yeah, they have. They've gotten all of you. They took all of you. They brought him from Norfolk, Virginia to be, you know, the Black liaison for Black entrepreneurs in Baltimore because Coca-Cola wanted that product. They wanted that revenue. So they brought him in to tap that community. And then, you know, they just laid him off. Like, he was like 2 years shy of retirement. Just laid him the fuck off. Nothing. Economy is the shit. You know what I'm saying? House is upside down. Shit is for shit. You know? House ends up going to foreclosure. My dad is slowly dying. My mother's about to retire. My uncle's in Florida and he's like on his second kidney transplant. They're trying to get my pops close to Mayo Clinic. Like, these are all the things that are constituting my existence and that inform the decisions that I make and how I negotiate my life. And so, like, here I am in the hospital with my pops watching him die at the same exact time while I'm thinking about how they all get a piece of us. And it makes me wonder, like, what are they going to get next from me? What else am I going to have to sacrifice? And what would that sacrifice look like? And will that sacrifice be of my own choosing? Like, Aristotle talks about mutual benefication with regard to, like, you know, how democracy can work. And Danielle Allen unpacks this shit for what democracy looks like, you know, in a racialized state. And who really gives up who really sacrifices, and what those sacrifices really look like. And this brings us to, you know, Obama's A More Perfect Union, when he talks about, you know, white resentment and black anger, right? Because folks feel as though they've given shit and they haven't, right?
Yeah.
And folks thinks that, you know, they've given things and others have benefited, but, like, you know, they just want more. And here we are in a Trump era that supports all of that.
Yeah.
And so what does it look like? What does civility look like? You know, I mean, I think it's also a very interesting question when we think about Trump. And we think about how we have taken so long to fucking sanction his bullshit. I mean, not sanction, to clap back at his bullshit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he is the opposite of civility.
Yeah.
And that's totally fine for many people.
Right. And I have to say, you know...
I was just going to say, it's fine for him, but it's not fine for you or anyone that looks like you.
Or
right.
you. Or you.
Yeah.
Or you.
Yeah, like none of us could get away with what he gets away with. I mean, it's not just... He's just very, very wealthy and also just like this cult leader, basically.
So Anita Hill was on campus 2 weeks ago, right? And that was phenomenal. So it was phenomenal, a phenomenal lecture. And just 2 nights ago, I was at Bakari Sellers, his talk. And these two people gave me so much fucking hope.
Oh, good.
You know what I mean? About how to read Trump. And it reminded me of the fact that, yeah, y'all motherfucker, not Bakari, because he's a young motherfucker, but, like, you know, y'all done seen this shit before.
Mm-hmm.
And y'all have survived shit like this before. And, you know, going back to the assault, it was like, I need to read women who have gone through or who have persevered through certain situations in their lives to find out how do I walk through mine, right? So, like, you know, Barbara Ransby's biography on Ella Baker became, you know, a major model for me, right? You know, Tanisha Ford's book on Liberated Threads, you know what I'm saying, modeled a lot of things, not modeled, but, like, reaffirmed a lot of things for me about how I choose to walk and why I choose to walk the way I walk. And those things have been really affirming. And on the other hand, like, here I see people communicating that Trump has been the catalyst, right, for a certain kind of change. That it has to get so bad and so ugly before we actually make a certain kind of response, because we've been complacent for, you know, a certain period of time. And basically, Bakari had talked about Trump being this silver lining of sorts, right? And I thought to myself, we will survive this. He's right. We will survive this.
Most of us will, yeah.
Yeah, yes. And you know what? Thank you so much for saying it, Carrie, because you're right. Most of us will, right? And there's a large number of us that will not. Yeah. And there's a large number of us who will generationally suffer as a result of those who are not able to survive this now, right? So let me not forget them or exclude them. But we'll find a way. And the idea that we will find a way, just the idea, because it wasn't something I considered, because I had just been in this place of despondency and destitution for so fucking long, you feel me?
Yeah.
It just kind of, like, you know, made a home there. And I think that's part of the 3-year battle that I've gone through writ large. Like, you know, I got here in 2011 and it was shit. 2012 was shit. 2013 was shit. 2014 was some shit. You feel me? And, you know, three years later, here I am. And I'm doing a hell of a lot better than what I was. And it has a lot to do with everything that I've been through. I'm not asking to go through that shit again. I'm just saying. And nor would I wish that shit on anybody else. But I am thankful for what I've been able to learn as a result of choosing life over something else.
Yeah, when I think about trauma, like, because you and I both have been through some trauma.
Carrie.
I agree with you. I would never wish it on anyone else, and I wouldn't want to go through it again. But if I hadn't gone through it, I wouldn't have learned certain things. So for me, I was in, like, a car accident, which in some ways was a lot less traumatic. And then the next year, my parents were attacked by a person having a psychotic break. But anyway, so, and those were like a year apart, almost exactly to the day.
Yeah.
Just so that you have the background. But
so, and what she's not, you know, sharing is that she almost fucking lost her life.
That's true.
She almost lost her life, and then,
or at least it seemed like
there were other no bitch.
I was hit by a semi truck, so yeah.
Yes, right. Like she just said, car accident. No, this one a little cute fender bender and shit.
No,
you know what I mean?
It was a serious one. But I was fine. Like, I had some scratches on my arms, but like physically I was fine, and that's why it just seems like, well, in the grand scheme of things, but it was very traumatizing at the time.
No doubt.
But anyway.
And then the following year, your parents.
Yeah.
And then that's some sustaining shit. Mm-hmm. You know? And that's the other thing too, the way trauma sits with you. And the way trauma is generationally shared. Mm-hmm. And inherited.
Yeah, and I also keep thinking about this whole Trump situation, that it's true that he's a catalyst for like amazing change, but we're suffering so much. So I don't want to be like too Pollyannish about it, but on the other hand, if I'm not Pollyannish about it, then I'm totally depressed. Right.
Right. So how are you walking in this moment? How are you working to survive this moment?
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to unpack.
Yes. And so with the civility, the question of civility, it was here I was, standing by my father's bedside as he died, crying my eyes out, apologizing for doing what I knew was right, and watching Sandra Bland do exactly what I did to the T, and to see what happened to her thereafter. And it just solidified even more why my father was so upset with me.
Yeah.
It just made it all, and then the way she got read, as a descending body in the street. And it just made me think, like, that's civility at work. There's so many other options, so many other choices she could have made about how she chose to engage him, right? And how do you maintain integrity and self-respect in those instances, right? Everything she was doing was for those reasons. Everything I was doing was for those reasons. I knew I was going to be taken down. She knew eventually she was going to get sniped the fuck up. You know what's coming. When somebody is coming for you, you know. And so going back to this notion of being overseen, right? Like my read of Sandy and similarly my read of me is that I saw, and this is what set him the fuck off. I saw him and I saw what he was doing and I called bullshit. Yeah. And people don't like that.
No.
Sandy saw him and saw what he was doing and called bullshit. So when Yesenia said, is there a problem? She goes, I don't really know why you're pulling me over. You ran up behind me. Sat on my tail, and then I slide over, and then you pull me over saying that, I failed the signal. Well, you ran up on me like I need to get out the way, so I was just trying to get out of your way.
Yeah, that was a trap.
That's exactly what it was. Just like your fucking tail light is out. Mm-hmm. Just like I smell alcohol in your breath. Mm-hmm. So she was stopped. I was stopped. I was literally stopped in the middle of the street as I crossed the street. Sandy was on her way home from her first day of work. Mm-hmm. I was on my way home from my first day of work. We're both going to schools. Mm-hmm. Both working to educate and uplift. And to likewise, be given back to in a similar fashion. To be educated and likewise uplifted. So you gonna fucking work to make yourself legible to me. So what do you mean? What do you mean? Do I know the difference between a street and a sidewalk? Do you always roll up on women like this in the middle of the night and speak to them so rudely and with such disrespect as you just did me?
Yeah.
Don't play with me today, motherfucker. Don't play with me today. Don't play with me today. And the other irony of this shit is that, I had like Beats by Dre in my, bugs in my ear. Listen to Kendrick Lamar and shit. It's Mad City. It's fucking Mad City. And I'm thinking, I'm writing and I'm walking. And I don't know if you know about this, Megan, but I'm quite sure Carrie knows this. Like, I write in motion.
Yeah.
I like to get on the bus and sit on the light rail and write or read. And I think it's probably because as a kid, I grew up on 95. I was always up and down 95 and 495 in the backseat of a car. And, you sit quietly with a book and you mind your business, shut the fuck up. And you only ask, are we there yet so many times before you get your ass beat? So, that's how I grew up. And I think that's why it wasn't until grad school that I realized that that's how I write.
Oh, wow.
And I wrote my dissertation on audio driving everywhere else but fucking Penn State, because you got to get the fuck out of Penn State. Because that bitch will kill you too.
Yeah, I'm sure.
That bitch will kill you too. And so, yeah, like I'm walking and I'm writing, right? And when I'm on the light rail, I got my headphones on and I'm writing. When I'm walking, I have my phone out, I got my headphones on, I'm writing. It's always music in my ears. I'm always physically in motion, moving, and I'm writing. And here I am thinking as I'm, because my mind is always racing, right? Because I can't stop my brain from running, and breathing and trying to be present in the moment rather than trying to anticipate everything because I'm scared of everything. And like, here I am shouting out to these people saying, I know you see me. I'm not invisible. I know you see me. And this is what complicity looks like. Mm-hmm. This is what a rhetoric of silence enacted feels like, right? Will I know what it feels like to wake up from this? You know, those are the thoughts that were going through my fucking mind.
Yeah, it's kind of like a near-death experience.
And then you watch body after body after body after body dead in the street.
And do you think it's an example of not performing civility the way that those officers want people to perform civility?
And so I would love to say that if it wasn't execution style, every fucking thing.
Yeah.
You know, there's a reason why the mantra is hands up, don't shoot.
Right.
Yeah.
These are individuals who aren't resisting.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't resisting. I was just trying to have a conversation. I'm asking questions. Motherfuckers getting upset because they can't answer the questions.
Right.
And so I asked myself, did I give him what he wanted?
Yes and no. I mean, probably you just being deferential would have soothed his ego.
And it would have killed the shit out of me.
Right.
Right.
But then he also got the satisfaction of hurting you, so...
There's something I was going to ask related to language, and I think it is related to, like, rhetoric specifically. Mm-hmm. So what I notice is that we, non-Black people, expect Black folks to change the way that you speak to make us comfortable. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's, you know, our country is, the foundation of our country is white supremacy and, you know, these terrible systems that are going to keep perpetuating this thing where we're going to expect people that are quote unquote different to change to be more like us.
Right.
And I would say especially it's very anti-Black and anti-Indigenous, particularly.
Yes. Yeah. So, and then it reminds me also of this quote unquote angry Black woman.
Yes. Which is part of the conversation on civility.
Mm-hmm. Right. Exactly. So if you show the same emotions that I might share.
Exactly.
You're going to be the angry Black woman.
And this is why Ida B. Wells, this was chief to her rhetorical performance, right? For her anti-lynching campaign was not to show emotion, was to focus on ethos and logos and try to do her damnedest to leave out pathos, specifically because she was a Black female body in public space and in public spaces in ways historically that Black women were not speaking bodies.
Can you explain those three terms? Because I don't think all of our listeners will know them. Oh.
Ethos, pathos, logos?
Yes.
Ethos, pathos, logos are basically the foundation of rhetoric, right? And when I say rhetoric in this case, I mean how we use language to produce desired outcomes, right? So ethos denotes the audience's ability to discern that you are a good faith human being, right? It is the projection, it's the rhetor or the speaker or the performer's projection of goodwill, right? Good intent. It has to do with the authority to speak, right? What renders you authoritative or an expert to speak about this particular issue to me, right? Why should I listen to you, right?
Right.
That's ethos. It has to do with character, right? And virtue. Pathos is the appeal to emotions, right? Ethos is the appeal to character, good character. Pathos is the appeal to emotions, right? And logos is the appeal to logic.
Thank you.
Sorry. And those are what we call the rhetorical appeals. Yeah. And they constitute all communicative, transactions.
And she said that she left out pathos specifically.
Specifically because, first women are already crazy, right?
Right.
And so they're already hysterical. So you can't believe them when they get quote unquote emotional. Right. So that's the foundation of that argument, right? And then not the foundation, but because it's very much an intersectional positionality that she's articulating. She can't be emotional because she's a woman. She also can't be emotional because she's Black. And so it's more important for her to come off as, and a lot of people had challenged her femininity, right? In ways of saying that she was either a whore or that she was masculine, right? Because she didn't show emotion like a woman did. But yeah, her arguments about her anti-lynching advocacy campaign was founded on her construction of ethos as a logical, rational speaking Black female body. Right? That was the foundation of Ida B. Wells' discourse. When we look at other women, Maxine Waters would be an example, right? Yeah. some people do read her as the angry black bitch, right? But within the community, right, she's Auntie Maxine for a fucking reason. Because Auntie Maxine stayed clapping back and she stayed true to the tradition, right? She is the epitome of black girl magic on stage. She is the epitome of civility while black and female in public, right? She speaks without equivocation. Right? She has no problem with schooling a motherfucker. You know what I mean? From rooter to the tutor, right? So like, I mean, there's I know those are two very different examples, you know, one from the early 19th century and one, you know, 21st century iteration.
But there's a thread.
Yes. Yeah. And part of that work of trying to understand this trope of the angry black bitch, the angry black woman, is really me trying to understand not simply the ways that black female bodies in public space have been delegitimized, right? But more importantly, about what kind of civic performance does that index for me, right? I'm looking at these women as models, as models of a certain kind of civic literacy, right? Democratic literacy. I mean, Fannie Lou Hamer is this, you know, Ella Baker is this. I mean, September Clark is this, you know. I mean, there's tons of iterations, but I'm interested in a 21st century manifestation with regard to, and this has to do with the book, with regard to policing. Part of my understanding is that, and this is the connection between the first book and the second book. The first book is about lynching. And it ends with it really traces lynching from the instantiation of the nation to the contemporary moment. And it traces the way that it has changed, right? And identifying anti-black policing as a manifestation of America's lynching tradition. Yes. It follows the same rhetoric, right? And it produces the same material object, which is, it legitimates the production of the same material object, which is the eradication of black life, right? And so, like, if we understand that the ultimate citizen was, and keep in mind the discourse that legitimated lynching was a discourse of citizenship, and this is what the book has to deal with, about how lynchers constructed themselves as the best leading citizens, right? This was a performance of civic virtue, right? And a constitutive practice of what it meant to be a member of this polity, right? And in performing and in lynching, you are literally enacting an argument that states that African Americans are not members of the polity, right? Because you are literally denying them due process of law. So when you rescind an individual's, you know, due process of law, you are saying that they are not a citizen, they are not a member of the polity, they are not governed by the same rights and privileges that protect you. Right. And
do we also do this with a type of coded language like Law and Order and the War on Drugs?
Yes. So Michelle Alexander is the new Jim Crow.
Right.
And this is Michelle, I'm only citing Michelle because Michelle succinctly does this for a popular audience.
Yeah.
This scholarship, this work, this research has been ongoing for years, right? Michelle's book succinctly just sums the shit all up for a popular audience so they can understand what the issue is. And that's why it's so important and so significant. And hence the reason why I'm using her as a footnote here. But yeah. And so, like, the argument that I have for, you know, the first manuscript is about the eradication of black life. Like, that is a constitutive practice of American civic identity.
Right. And that's why people that's why the system of education, K through 12 and our higher ed is so hostile toward black folks. We don't want them there, right? We don't want them to.
I mean, they're still teaching that slavery is not the reason for the Civil War.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And think about all the other things that get taught as well. You know what I'm saying? If that myth is getting taught, think about what, the history of the Constitution of the nation in and of itself. Think about the conversation of who else is left out. You know what I'm saying? There's no conversation about Native Americans at all. There's no conversation about, white immigrants from Europe at all. Really about how they work to constitute a construction of white civic identity that participates in perpetuation of, the exclusion of others from civic rights and, and privileges.
Yeah, like Ben Franklin hated Germans. Like if you think about it, it was a very narrow set of people who were acceptable. And yes, they were all white men, but they were like white in a different sense than what we mean now.
And so, like, part of the argument of the first manuscript has to do with founders' intent. Like, what was the intent of founders when they were constructing the nation? How did they imagine what the polity would be like? And what were some of the governing principles they imagined, that good men speaking well, right? Because that's what the definition of the citizen was, right? Cicero. What that looked like, right? Well, we need an educational system to prepare our young men to be, the leaders that we want them to be, because we need someone to take our place. Hence, educational system, right? Yeah. But what a lot of people don't understand is like the link between, education and the nation has to do with, the eradication of Black lives. So, both private and public, university institutions are constituted through the exploitation of Black lives via slavery, right? So like many of these universities were, funded by, the transatlantic slave trade.
Right.
A lot of stuff was funded that way at the time. I mean, nothing would get done.
But this is exactly because this is part of the exclusive inclusion, in the sense of it's not identified as being a constitutive portion of how things come to fruition, right? It's the part of the narrative that gets left out. Of course, there's tons of other parts of the narrative that also get left out as well. But when we talk about taking this to linguistics, for instance, right, and thinking about African American, vernacular, AAVE, thinking about Black English, thinking about Ebonics, right? What is the place, if the very body, right, that constructed this house of education and learning, right, is the very body that was excluded from it, that is now in the 1950s, 1960s, 1970s, right, permitted to enter, right? I'm thinking about, what happened with the change of public education and following the, the GI Bill and what have you, and
Brown.
Open enrollment, and how you have this influx of working class POC, right? But white as well, right? And immigrant communities coming to higher education, and how the way in which they speak, right, is considered a deficit. It's considered a handicap. It's considered a marker of their intellectual ineptitude, right? The way you speak with an accent, therefore you think with an accent. You know what I'm saying?
Whatever that means.
Son.
We all have an accent.
Son. And it literally is like this notion of a, intellectual handicap, because the way we say you're supposed to speak when you come into this space, right? You're not speaking like that, and you're not writing like that. So there's something wrong with how your mind works.
And yet when a person of color does come into that space and speaks the way that our educational system wants them to speak, they're quote unquote articulate.
Right. Hence Obama, right?
Yeah. Right.
And this is so crazy because and I love this book, Articulate While Black, right? It's by linguist Sammy Alim, and the mother of Black linguistics, you know what I'm saying? Dr. Geneva, aka lovingly called Dr. G. Smitherman. She's my my academic mother, and Articulate While Black is dope as shit, and it's all about Obama and Black language in the White House. You know what I'm saying? Like literally put on national stage in ways that it otherwise hasn't been.
Right.
And how Obama has been treated and understood and interpreted as a result of his ability to use multiple linguistic registers.
Right.
And this brings me back to the thought about the students' rights in their own language. Are you familiar with that one, Megan?
No, I'm not. Is it a book?
No. So it's a position.
Oh, okay.
It's a position that was issued by the National Council of Teachers of English and the Conference on College Composition and Communication, right? So NCTE and 4Cs. So we constitute the individuals who teach you how to read and write, basically, right?
Okay.
And for the 4Cs specifically, which is the college division, or all tiers, 2-year institutions and to 4-year institutions and graduate granting institutions as well. Your freshman composition, your junior composition, and they issued together a position on students' rights to their own language, because it was an address, a clapback to the eradication of students' linguistic diversity in academia. Right? You don't look like us and you don't talk like us, And so, you know, first, you don't talk like us. You don't look like us. It's a problem. Secondly, you don't talk like us, and that's a problem. So we're going to find a way to make sure we help you talk like us and write like us, right?
Right.
Hence the conversation about standard English, standard written English,
right.
Academic, you know, English and academic standards. And who are we really training these individuals to write to, for, and to what extent, for what purposes, you know? The rhetorical context of our writing situations, for instance, the rhetorical context of our speaking engagements as well. Mm-hmm. These are all issues that were brought up by linguists and teachers of writing during the 50s, 60s, and 70s as the university was changing as a result of, you know, major progressive legislation and what, you know, Omi and Wyman talk about as, you know, a racial break.
Actually, Dr. Ann Charity Hudley is a linguist up at UC Santa Barbara, and she tweeted recently that she's allowing her students to write in whatever dialect they have for their papers.
And that's part of the position, the position for, you know, students to the rights of their own language.
Yeah. So I want to see more of that. I love it.
I will put out one book just as a suggestive. I think it comes out later on this spring, if not this summer. It's called On African American Rhetoric. It's by Keith Gilliard and Adam Banks. Mm-hmm. It's a book it's basically an introduction to African American rhetorical tradition from you know, the early, you know, 18th century to the contemporary moment, and it includes, you know, digital literacies. So for those who want to have a better understanding of what a Black digital platform network looks like and how it operates rhetorically, and how that is both similar and distinct from other kind of publics, communicative publics, that'll be a piece. But there's also a chapter that's dedicated specifically to the teaching of English, right, and students' rights to their own language.
That's great. And do they talk about Black Twitter then?
Yes, there's a whole chapter. There's a whole chapter on Black Twitter.
That's awesome.
And Adam Banks is a scholar of rhetoric and composition and communication who focuses on digital technology, specifically within, you know, diasporic communities.
Yeah, that's great. I'm so happy that there are professors like you in academia.
Thank you, Megan. I'm looking forward to walking right alongside you, man, because in a couple of months, yeah, boo. You about to get it.
Get it?
Yeah, girl. It's Figueroa, right? It's Figueroa?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Dr. Figueroa. Dr. Fig.
Dr. Fig is good.
Dr. Fig.
Definitely Dr. Fig.
I love that. That's dope as shit. Girl, you gonna get any ink?
Do I got ink?
Are you gonna get any?
I should. Do you have it?
Oh yeah, I got a shit ton of ink, but I don't have any ink for, like, you know, I got a PhD type shit, or like I crossed this bridge that almost killed me type shit. I mean, well, you know, the PhD was another kind of bridge that almost, but not really. But I didn't get any ink for that. I got some ink for the assault shit.
Yeah. It's a good idea.
Just a thought.
Man, my sister got a tattoo for her PhD.
She did?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much for having me, ladies.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for talking with us.
I appreciate the fuck out of you. Take care. It's always good.
Yes. All right. Well, so
thanks, and don't be an asshole.
Don't be an asshole, everyone.
Yes.
Be anti-racist.
See you guys. Thank you.
All right. Bye.
The Vocal Fries podcast is produced by Chris Ayers for Halftone Audio. Theme music by Nick Granum. You can find us on Tumblr, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Vocal Fries Pod. You can email us at vocalfriespod@gmail.com.